Hello, this is Samantha and Zessie.
It's your boy, Ramon George Phillip, the first.
And this is Masculinity. Yeah.
Yo, I was walking to the subway today, and I've been, exhausted for, the last week. There's friends in town. There's traveling that's been happening over the last month. I've been so tired. And I was, walking like a zombie through the subway station, and I, saw one of those side advertisements, and I, stopped and almost freaked the fudge out, and I texted people about the thing I saw, and I took pictures of it. You know what it was?
No.
Mad About You's coming back.
Oh, my God.
20 years later, the best sitcom, I don't care you Seinfeld stands out there, Mad About You. It's what got me to New York, kind of. Felicity also got me to New York, but Mad About You. Helen Hunt, oh my God, I love you. Paul Reiser, you're the funny man. You taught me how to write comedy. Not really, but maybe.
Listen,
Samantha's
this
speechless.
Is news to me, okay? I have seen Mad About You maybe twice. I do love me some Helen Hunt, though. I love her. I think she's wonderful.
Yo, get educated.
Homie, apparently, because out of all the things I thought you were going to say, I very, very, very much was not at all expecting that.
Two things in life, love and basketball, and Mad About You. That's all I could need in my life. Facts.
So I just want to say that, if anybody is out there is a young, eligible bachelor looking good, doing his thing, I would love to have a date to go see Ramoy's Hurdle documentary coming up on November 13th here in New York.
Please come. Please be Samantha's date. Heck,
yes.
we could be.
You could be a woman too.
It could be polygamous. It could be multi-people. I don't know what we're talking about right now, but we can have multiple dates.
Yeah.
Samantha could bring a harem of sorts to this event.
I have room. I have room in my life for more than one.
What are we talking about today?
Work. We're talking about work.
Shout out to the Six God. Shout out to Riri.
I know. It's the worst workplace module, you guys.
Okay, yeah, we're talking about work, but what are we actually talking about?
Well, I feel I had to sit down and think about this, and I feel like when I think about the performance of masculinity in the workplace, that's right, the first thing that comes to mind is leadership, right? And I feel like we've come to understand leadership as a masculine trait, and because of that, we align leadership with manhood. Okay, so you're looking at me a little bit like you want some proof. So let me give you some stats. All right. So these days, men are earning less degrees than women at about 43% of undergraduate degrees and 41% of master's degrees. So while women hold about 52% of mid-management and professional level positions, men actually make up 95% of Fortune 500 CEOs.
That's wild.
Which is bonkers. Men are also 73.5 of executive and senior officials, as well as managers. And while we want to make sure that we shout out the people for electing a record amount of women to Congress last year, still with 115 women serving as representatives and senators, that makes 420 congressmen. Men. And honestly, if you want to go and look at more of the creative endeavors.
You have to throw shade my way. That's fine. Go ahead.
I am going to.
Necessary. Actually.
Yeah. If we're looking at that, dudes actually make up 82% of all directors, executive producers,
shade.
writers.
Shade.
I know. Cinematography. All the things that Ramoy does, you guys. And editors that Ramoy also does. Who worked on top grossing domestic films in 2017. Shade. And so it's clear that men and women have been acquiring the same level of education since 1988. With men actually being slightly outnumbered, the gap has not closed in the workplace. And we really have to ask ourselves why. So I asked a few New Yorkers why they thought that was.
Masculinity and leadership go hand in hand because it's societal structure. Practices are entrenched, and it's hard to change those things overnight.
Well, it's structural, it's systemic. It's been that way for a long time.
Absolutely not. Under no circumstances is it exclusively and essentially masculine.
We all think that the male version is what leadership is, but it's all so embedded.
I do believe you have to have a tough skin or a tough certain mentality to lead a certain set of people or to be in a certain place of leadership.
But doesn't mean women can't do it either.
We can see why, because most of the leaders that we see are men.
But then I'm thinking about this all day. Like, is it my fault? Is it our fault that we don't just step up and say, yeah, I can do that, even if inside we think we can't?
And unfortunately, I think a lot of women in leadership don't recognize that when they get to a position of leadership, even if it is in a female-dominated organization or space, that's the model they've seen. And so it becomes this perpetuating problem where the patriarchy has even seeped into feminist spaces.
Don't think it's fair to say, oh, well, she acts more masculine, therefore she's a better leader. And I feel like that works against women in the workplace.
If we just change the shift of, more equal playing field, I think it'd be a better adjustment.
I think we need to make conscious shifts to really think about what makes a good leader.
Things have changed. Believe me, they've gotten better, but I think we have a long, long way to go.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. That was great.
Okay, yeah. So there are clearly some stereotypes that will pervade in our conscious and unconscious minds about what leadership should look like.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've actually had many women bosses, but all of their bosses, besides literally only one, shout out to the baddest immigration lawyer in all of the land, Cheryl David, were men.
Yeah, but did you honestly notice a difference between the genders?
Honestly, I do have to say that there was definitely while Cheryl was a badass that takes no shit, I definitely noticed that in her organization there just was not really room for ego. Even her own, she was a badass, she took no shit from anybody, but she checked herself and called on her staff to check themselves. And in the other places that I've worked, I've had some amazing bosses who were women, but in terms of the environment that we were in, the culture we were in, there was definitely a lot of ego management throughout the company. And I'm not saying that it was because they were men-led, specifically men-led organizations, even though in some cases I definitely recognize that it actually may have been because of that. Really just the culture that was allowed to kind of thrive was really a contest culture. And I feel like this is kind of what we're trying to look into and talk about in this module. What are the repercussions of working in a workplace that upholds the mask of masculinity?
I'm really worried here because you're going to destroy everything that I've known about being a sports guy and competition and working hard and success and fucking be the Michael Jordan of the office. That was stupid.
Well, I mean, so are you familiar with the term masculinity contest culture?
No, but I can pick up where this is going.
Probably guess what it is, right? All right, so masculinity contest culture, it's a term that was coined last year by some really, really smart people over at the Harvard Business Review. And essentially the thought is that most companies and organizations and the way that we generally culture work, think of culture as a verb here in this country, exhibits these 4 attitudes. Okay, so number 1,
Holla.
Show no weakness. Okay.
This is what I'm talking about.
Exactly, right? Don't admit doubt or mistakes, burst with confidence, suppress your emotions. Number 2, strength and stamina, working really long hours, being athletic is obviously a plus. Number 3, work first.
Don't do this to me.
It's got to be said. Things outside of work don't interfere with work. That's a really, really big one. And then the 4th and final one, definitely not the least, is dog eat dog, right? This is a ruthless competition to be in the workplace, and winners, often considered more masculine, defeat the less masculine others, quote unquote, right?
Yeah, I think, and it's hard for me because this is all I've known, but this is what we always are talking about when we say the performance of masculinity and how it's learned and programming. This feels absolutely normal to me. This is what a workplace is, or this is what you learn in school. This is why you go to gym class, or this is why you're taught about sports and teamwork and stuff. It's how we're taught and it's how we're programmed from a very young age. And this becomes innate to labor or work in the workplace and how we think about work and how we're conditioned to believe what work is and how to get the most out of work. And it's highly masculine. And the way it's attuned is to be highly hard K mask of masculinity. But it felt so normal and it feels so normal. And now that we're having this conversation, though, it's making me very uncomfortable because I have to inquire oh shit. Everything I've learned, even when it comes to work, comes with a masculine sensibility or even a male gaze.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good article because it really highlights how it's been documented that this exact mindset actually puts businesses and organizations' effectiveness and reputation at risk. That's actually a really strong parallel to some of the other ways that we've been exploring the performance of masculinity, right? I mean, I feel like we've talked about it in various arenas, but like if we really look at it, there are certain ways that this kind of model can be transported to the different arenas of masculinity that we've already talked about. And I feel like one of the main things that I kind of took away from this article is how it's not just the dudes that are working there, right? It's not just, even though like, I mean, in my personal experience, it's usually happened in kind of like traditional top-down organizations that do have like more men in like C-suites or, you know, like the owners and like the management or whatever, the executives are dudes. We're all in that organization upholding that, right? It's a culture of contest. It's a culture of exhibiting the masculine traits.
Yeah, I think it's what we're talking about, and it's very eye-opening. It's like we can call it masculine, we could also call it patriarchy. We're talking about how patriarchy and masculinity are synonymous in this way and how they become the normal. And it's so hard to kind of take a step back and identify that and then kind of like be like, shit, how do we walk this back? Or how do we, even within this framework that we're all kind of participating in, like literally all of us are participating in because it's become so normalized. Like, how do we step back and like deconstruct this and find different ways, potentially better ways for us all to coexist and kind of participate in society?
I mean, when we talk about the performance of masculinity, a lot of times there's this kind of thought that it looks a very particular way, that it's very extreme, and that there's a certain sector of society that's able to perform it because of the access to power that they have, right? Or, you know, the access to money that they have. You know, in this case, if we're looking at the workplace, it's probably going to be the executives that are doing it, or it's going to be, you know, the owner that's doing it or whatever. And I really want to stress that if we're going to draw kind of a parallel to the other ways that we've looked at the performance of masculinity, we have to be able to look at the ways in which, and I am only saying this because I'm looking at the ways that I contribute to it, right? Like I'm looking at the ways that I'm being complicit in creating this and continuing this workplace culture. And so what I'm getting at is that the performance of masculinity in the workplace may not always be as extreme as work like 21 hours a day or whatever. It may not always be as extreme as that, but I just challenge myself and I challenge all of you out there to just take a look at the different ways that some of those masculinity context things might show up. And we may not necessarily realize just because it's the way that's been conditioned. You know, I just wanted to kind of make that point. So let you guys know a little bit more about how this module is going to go. We're going to have the opportunity to speak with a few awesome folks, including Eric Cussin. Hopefully that's how you pronounce his name. Shout out to you, Eric. Hopefully that's how you pronounce it. He is from an organization called We're All a Little Crazy, and he will be speaking to mental health in the workplace. Really excited to have him. We're also going to be speaking with Jason Rosario, who's the founder of The Lives of Men. Jason is doing some really, really awesome work. And we'll have the opportunity to talk to him about reshaping modern masculinity through strategic initiatives. Jason does a lot of work in different workplaces, consulting with them. And so we're really excited for that. And finally, we'll also do one of our favorite things. We're going to have our mini field study out here so we can talk to some folks in the mean streets of New York about the workplace. So it should be a good module.
Like, am I going to have to now, like, think about, like, all those people that I admire or have admired who are hard workers and, like, rethink about this? Oh, this is hard.
I think maybe you could take solace in the fact that we're all doing it. I don't know if that helps or not.
That's fine.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
All right, guys. So we just want to thank you again for engaging in the conversation about this wild life that is the performance of masculinity. Please, you know what? Why don't you leave us a review? Get a little couple stars. Let's get a lot of stars. Let's get 4 stars, 5 stars. You can hit us up on Masculinity Podcast at whoistheo.com if you have any topics that you would like to discuss. And you know where to find us on the socials. Don't forget to put a K in Masculinity Pod. So, my name is Samantha Zessie.
It's your boy George Phillip, the first.
And this is Masculinity.
Peace.
Ciao.